Hello, everybody, and welcome to GulchCast. I'm Kenny Hitt here, as always, with Michelle Ray. Michelle, how are you doing today?
I have survived the coronavirus, so I guess I'm doing great.
So far, so good, huh?
Right.
Yeah. We are here to talk to you about the latest in science, technology, economics, freedom, and all that good stuff. Don't forget to check out our website at GulchCast.com. You can check out all the stories that we're going to be talking about this evening. Before we get started, a little bit of sad news. I do want to recognize here, what do the DeLorean from Back to the Future, the Nostromo from Alien, and Conan the Barbarian's sword have in common? That's production designer Ron Cobb. He is the production designer and the conceptualist behind many of the biggest blockbusters of the 80s and 90s. He worked on everything from Alien and Aliens to The Abyss, as I said, Conan the Barbarian, Back to the Future, even movies like Real Genius. He designed ships for Firefly. An amazing talent. Was a countercultural alternative cartoonist back in the 60s. Worked as an in-between animator on Sleeping Beauty for Disney. And just such a incredible career. And Michelle, do you have any thoughts about the loss of Ron Cobb?
Well, so it's interesting. You had mentioned that you wanted to pay a tribute to him, and of course I read the article that was posted on GulchCast. But despite the fact that all of those movies and major theatrical events actually played a really big part of my life, I'm sad to say I didn't recognize his name. And Ron, if he's done anything other than participate in all of these iconic moments in all of our lives, has spurred me to spend a little more time giving recognition to the people that make those moments possible for us in the future.
Absolutely. You think about, especially science fiction and fantasy, I mean, futurism is such a big part of that. He has just this amazing resume. He designed a lot of the aliens that you see in the cantina in Star Wars. He did all of the ship designs in the movie The Last Starfighter, which is such a fun movie. And we'll be actually talking about Dune soon enough, because you and I, both huge Dune fans, and of course we saw the trailer, which came out recently, but he was actually part of Alejandro Jodorowsky's unfortunately unsuccessful attempt to adapt Dune.
Yeah, the best adaptation that never made the big screen.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was there that he met up with Chris Foss and H.R. Giger, and he had already been working with Dan O'Bannon, and even though that movie didn't succeed, that same crew are the ones who did all of the production design for Alien, which is such an incredible motion picture achievement. So a truly great loss, and he will be missed. I've been a big fan of his art for a long time. If you ever get the chance, if you can track down the 4-movie set from the Alien saga, and check out the making of documentaries for the first and second movies. He's all over those and has a ton of his behind-the-scenes art and the things that he designed. As I said, he worked on the Nostromo. For Aliens, he did all of the atmosphere processor and the colony stuff. I believe he also worked on the dropship that they used to actually get the Marines onto the planet. His stuff is amazing. Check out his official website. We'll have a link to it in the show post, and take a look at some of his cartoons and his art. A lot of his cartoons that he's done are just as relevant today, if not more so, than they were back in the 60s when he drew them. So, sad day, but we'll always have the stuff that he made.
Right, and honestly, you've just inspired me to spend some time, I think, this weekend pointing this out to at least my 17-year-old daughter, who is a big sci-fi fan and definitely would be appreciative of the effort that goes into creating the details that we all remember from these iconic shows.
Yes. Also a little bit sad because, I mean, we lost Sid Mead just a couple months ago, too, I think it was, and another amazing futurist, an imaginative mind. Sadly, these folks that made these amazing movies that we loved when we were, kids and teenagers, they're starting to age, and unfortunately, this is going to be, I think, something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of, in times to come.
Yeah, and interesting is what those replacements look like in the future. It's obviously, as you mentioned, Dune earlier. I'm really excited for the show when we decide to get into that. But it's not as if Dune, at least from the trailer appearance, looks like it's lacking in creative inspiration. And I think, maybe in a future show, in the not too distant future, or as a part of that Dune show, I would love to discuss who are the new creative forces behind some of these newer blockbusters, in particular that you and I both love, the sci-fis of the last, say 8 or 10 years that you and I both love, and what the differences between the creative technology for some of our earlier inspirations to the ones we love now.
There's been big news in the past, as of this recording, 48 hours in the video game world, and that is that ZeniMax Media, which is the parent company of Arcane Studios, Bethesda Studios, and id Software, has agreed to be acquired by Microsoft as part of their Xbox video game studios. This is a seismic shift in the world of video games. Any of you follow it, these are some of the biggest video game franchises in the world. Some of the most lucrative, some of the most popular. Games like Fallout and The Elder Scrolls, Doom, Quake, Rage, Dishonored, Prey. I mean, these are some big franchises that are now going to be part of Microsoft. And what did you think about when we first told you about this, Michelle?
Well, so it's been a really long time since I was an active gamer, but obviously it's not been a long time since I've started paying attention to the consolidation of production studios, particularly in big name franchises. And obviously a concern when something like this happens is, will these individual producers, distributors, and studios still kind of maintain that autonomy when it comes to what they're producing, continuing these franchises and making them available to platforms? Obviously, Microsoft's big gaming platform, the Xbox, being certainly their priority, but obviously my concern is are you going to be able to still get some of these great games in the future on different platforms?
Right, and I don't think it's a coincidence that this deal got announced on Monday, and then Tuesday is when the next series of Xboxes went on sale. Pre-orders began, again, as of this recording, today, and the buyout was announced yesterday. So I have to wonder if that was timed specifically to drum up some enthusiasm for this new series of consoles, maybe with the expectation that people will assume that a lot of these big games are now going to be Xbox exclusive. I hope that's not the case, but Xbox Studios has been taking a lot of big franchises and making them at least temporarily Xbox exclusives or Windows and Xbox exclusives. But The Elder Scrolls and Doom, for example, and Fallout have been big sellers for the PlayStation as well. So the question becomes, does Microsoft play for control of the franchises, or do they want to go after the dollar amounts that they could get from selling these games to other systems as well? And there's precedence for both. The Halo games are exclusive to Xbox and Windows, but they also own Minecraft, and Minecraft is out on every system you can possibly think of.
Right. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, my 17-year-old is a gamer, and we were discussing, her early days as a Minecraft enthusiast, and for nostalgia reasons, and for honestly the educational opportunities that come with a game like Minecraft. That was her first question too, is what happens to all of these games that have built up huge fandoms across other consoles. And it's interesting you mentioned the launch of the two new consoles coming up from Microsoft, the Xbox consoles. I believe pre-orders for the PS5 also launched either yesterday or today. As of this recording too. So I mean, there's obviously, and I know there were huge sweeping changes with Game Pass rumored to be included with the high-end Xbox console, and then some dramatic changes with the PS5. So you're right, the timing is certainly no coincidence. It's just who's gonna went out this round.
Right. Yes, the pre-orders for the PS5 went on, I believe, this past weekend. I believe they started on Friday, or they were supposed to start this weekend, but some of the retailers started doing them early. And so a lot of people, unfortunately, got left out in the cold because they didn't hold to any kind of agreement that they had made with Sony. They just went ahead and started the pre-orders. And so a lot of people who were waiting for that pre-order announcement missed out on the chance to get a console. And I know some of those slots, some of those pre-order slots are already ending up on eBay and being sold for $1,000, $1,500 a pop.
Yeah, tragically, the PS5 was going to be my big birthday gift to myself this year. And I myself missed a pre-order slot, so now it may wind up, if I'm really, really lucky, being a belated Christmas gift.
What really kind of blows my mind, too, is the price tag on this deal. $7.5 billion is what Microsoft is paying for ZeniMax. And just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective here, when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they paid $4 billion, part of which was stock. So Microsoft is paying almost twice for ZeniMax. So for Doom and the Elder Scrolls and Fallout as what Disney paid for primarily Star Wars.
Well, there's no denying that gaming is a global sensation, and Xbox has a controlling interest globally, and acquiring some of these games, I think, is definitely going to be a payoff. Either way, whether you said, as you said, whether they make them console specific or they allow them to be across console sales. So, I mean, I honestly don't think it's an economic gamble for Microsoft, that price tag.
So, in that spirit of worldwide communication and worldwide trends, let's talk about TikTok and WeChat. Now, this is something I think you've been following a little bit more closely than I have, but obviously President Trump has been none too keen on allowing TikTok to continue to operate as part of a Chinese-based company. There have, of course, been fears that TikTok and possibly WeChat were taking data from users and delivering it to the Chinese government. I suspect a lot of his anger at those properties might have something to do with that very famous failed rally that he held where I guess TikTok fans got together and pre-ordered a bunch of the free tickets and caused a very, very low turnout to the event. But this weekend, there's been a lot of confusion as to what exactly is going on, because both of those were supposed to be removed from app stores as of this weekend, but there was an injunction, but there was also talk of a deal. What exactly is going on there?
So, yeah, to go back to the very, very beginning, regardless of President Trump's personal ire against TikTok in particular, or TikTok and WeChat, there has long been concern, and really, the Chinese government doesn't hide the fact that they are in full control not only of the content that goes out on these applications, specifically in China, but not necessarily only in China, but also what happens to the data that is collected by these applications. Anybody who's been following me or the show for a while knows that I'm really intensely concerned about user privacy as just these apps become ubiquitous, particularly social media apps. And so add to that the possibility that, TikTok users themselves might have poked the bear a little bit. Back in August, an executive order was issued banning these apps from the App Store, as you mentioned. It was to have taken place earlier in the summer, but the date was pushed back because of the likelihood or the possibility of a deal. The deal requirement under Trump's initial plan was that a U.S. company had to take over 100% of the U.S. operations, of TikTok's U.S. operations. Since then, yes, there has been an injunction. Actually, it was an injunction against stopping WeChat from being removed based on First Amendment concerns of U.S. users. But also the Chinese government decided that they were not going to agree to an original deal in which Oracle was going to take over U.S. operations. Because of that, and some changes and the deal proposition was now that U.S. companies could have a minority stake, including a seat on the board. I believe it was Walmart and Microsoft are in a joint bid now to together wind up with one seat on the board and a small minority share of the company itself. So somewhere around 22%, I think, is what they would get. It would also allow Walmart to integrate some retail capabilities into the U.S. TikTok app. Now, if there are two huge sides of this debate, of course, one being that the government should not be involved in software that users try to, want to use. And, user beware, buyer beware, of course, in this case. And also that because of the nature of the United States' relationship with China recently, concerns about the sheer amount of information that comes from TikTok and WeChat would be completely, available for the Chinese government to use at their whim and will. How dangerous is this information in the hands of somebody else? I don't know. Ask anybody who's had their identity stolen or their money stolen or their cryptocurrency stolen. And that doesn't even, lend into national security concerns.
There is another concern, though, that I think I should bring up, and that is TikTok's popularity with children. Because there are a lot of young children, I'd say like 11 and up, that are very much into TikTok. And yes, buyer beware, but that's assuming an adult who can read terms of service and actually do the research on that. If a kid has a smartphone and they download TikTok, then in a lot of cases, they're of course not going to be paying attention to what the national security implications of TikTok are, but their parents probably aren't either. They just know, oh, TikTok, that's where, the people make the silly videos. They don't necessarily know that it's a Chinese company running it, and they don't have the time or the energy or the inclination to do the research. And so there has to be this careful balance between consumer freedom, but also the security aspect, and also protecting those same consumers' rights, because it's very easy to take advantage of somebody through very creative ways. And there has been speculation as well that TikTok, especially on the Android app, which, the Android App Store doesn't necessarily have as rigorous a quality control as the Apple App Store does, there may be stuff hidden in those apps, because it's happened before, that people don't necessarily know about and aren't necessarily disclosed in the terms of service.
Well, I don't have to repeat myself. I do this all day long online. You, as a user, certainly are responsible for checking out privacy policies and terms of services. And as a mother who's got 3 teenage girls who absolutely forbids them to use social media of any kind, I take it upon myself to know what's on their phones, to know what they're using, to know even the school applications that they're using now, to make sure that they don't have location services on, that they don't have access to microphones and other files and cameras and things like that. And you're right. The popularity of TikTok is primarily with younger people. It concerns me a great deal that we have politicians and media personalities and, Hollywood entertainers, using TikTok as a way to reach these people rather than extolling the dangers of putting yourself out there without regard for what's happening to all of this information and content that you are creating without being aware of what other information that these applications have access to on your phone. And I personally would never in a million years use TikTok. It has nothing at all to do with the fact that TikTok is a Chinese-made application. That is really a minor detail for me. It is just the knowledge that I am in no way, shape, or form in control of any information that is gathered by this application, and really have no way to know what all is being gathered. Just because their privacy policy says one thing doesn't mean that the app doesn't do another. So at this particular moment in time, I am inclined to, be concerned about the lack of transparency, which is, I think, one of the things having a U.S. company take over U.S. operations was designed to mitigate. But at this point, the way the deal is moving and changing and shifting, it really just kind of looks like an appeasement deal so that somehow we don't disrupt the millions upon millions of users. Now, we're not the first country to consider and or ban TikTok. India banned TikTok quite a while ago, along with dozens or maybe hundreds of other Chinese-made applications over similar concerns and over concerns of real national security because of issues going on between those two countries. So I think should be a much bigger deal, despite the fact that it's dominating news. Unfortunately, it's been dominating news with a political skew rather than an eye towards preserving consumer personal information and data rights for United States users.
And it's interesting that you bring up free speech, earlier in this whole argument, because that is why WeChat was allowed to continue to stay on the store according to the injunction. But TikTok has a history of deleting and censoring users who espouse views in solidarity with things like the Free Hong Kong movement, the Hong Kong democracy movement, things that are anything critical of China. Those videos and those users have a tendency to get deleted.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's no secret that the CCP, the Chinese government, are masters of censorship and controlling the message. They haven't made any secret that their censorship algorithms and requirements have been exported to countries, with users in other countries as well. So absolutely, the idea that, U.S. citizens, U.S. users were being censored on this app was a big early talking point when it came to talking about banning these, banning both WeChat and TikTok. So unfortunately, as I said earlier, I think the argument that the concerns were about censorship and or private data fall away as the strength of the U.S. control in this deal fades. And right now, if you were to ask me what I think is going to happen is, Trump, the government, the U.S. government has an option at this point. They can really ban these applications, have them pulled from the app stores in the U.S., and draw the ire and accusations that they don't care about, First Amendment rights on social media, or they can cave and draw, ire of people who are seriously concerned about censorship and personal data privacy. So it's kind of a no-win situation at this point for the Trump administration. And I honestly, if you ask me what's going to happen, I think we're going to see a deal in which U.S. companies get a minor stake for some development input and some revenue opportunities.
And speaking of data security, let's talk about Loki Bot, because this is definitely a problem, especially if the Department of Homeland Security is releasing an alert about a malware threat. It's a big deal. And this is a nasty little piece of software. There's a story on GulchCast.com right now. You can check it out. The Department of Homeland Security released a statement on this malware. It's basically a suite of malware programs that can pull data from over 100 different applications on a Windows machine. It looks for passwords. It has a keylogger, and it goes right after your cryptocurrency wallets, and it can open up backdoors on your infected systems. What are your thoughts on Loki Bot?
Yeah, so actually Loki Bot is not new. I know it has been on at least DHS's radar for at least a couple of years now, but it was always kind of one of their low priority concerns. It is, but as you said, it is particularly malicious. It targets high value targets. I think we may or may not have talked about an instance where an executive of a company was convinced to send a huge sum of money overseas based on somebody who had social engineered enough information to convince this executive that he was another executive in the company. And that is a real world consequence of what Loki Bot can deliver. It can deliver, as you mentioned, all of this information, including keyloggers, which allow these hackers to assume identities in huge companies and to approach high value targets with the intent of taking their money. And so, while we tell everybody often on this show, be careful online, do all the things you've been told since the inception of email, don't click on links you don't understand. Loki Bot has access to a lot more information beyond just, being able to read your email. And so I think that as DHS makes this a big deal, it should become a big deal for enterprise customers and for users who spend a great deal navigating the web.
And one of the things that's really concerning about this malware is that it specifically targets, among other things, password management software. So things like LastPass. Dropbox has recently started doing its own password management system. And these systems are made to be one-click easy. You click on the site that you want to log into, it handles through scripting, putting in the username and password so you don't have to type everything in, which is great if you're trying to avoid something like a keylogger. But if this malware were to access that and get those credentials and understand the scripting that you're using on this, it could potentially log into all of your sites and have all of your data in a matter of hours, if not quicker.
Yeah, that's not horrifying at all. Thanks for bringing that up. Actually, I'm a huge fan, as you know, of password managers, and the more encrypted, the better, and the more complicated, the better. But the hackers and crackers are always going to, target those information-rich areas. And I think that the best we can advise is be aware that these things are out there. Use best practices when it comes to security. Don't click on random attachments. Don't make your passwords predictable. Don't use the same password over and over. Use a manager. Have a plan in place for how to change your passwords very quickly. Keep a record of them. Honestly, I keep a record of my passwords that are offline, just in case of an emergency and I can't get into something that I'm using to manage my passwords online, along with contact information. Use an encrypted email service. Use a VPN. What else can we say? Lock yourself inside your house. Never leave. Don't talk to anybody.
So, scary times. Anytime you've got malware of this type of scale, and as I said, something that's dangerous enough to warrant a Department of Homeland Security response, very, very concerning.
What's up? I'm Aaron Lewis. You're listening to GulchCast.
Let's move to some good news. Something that's kind of broken in the past couple of hours that I didn't know if we were going to get the chance to talk about. Well, I've got enough details now. We can hit upon it briefly here. You and I are both big fans for completely different reasons of Elon Musk.
This is true. Both big fans for very different reasons.
And you are a big fan of his. Why?
So, it doesn't take a genius to realize that for me, my belief in futurism comes from ignoring the rules and being willing to put your name and yourself and your own money and your own sweat on the line. And while I know Elon Musk has gotten some sweet taxpayer funding, he's also the one who says he's going to do something and then he delivers it. Maybe not in a perfect iteration the first time around. Sorry, Cybertruck, but he delivers. And I think we need a lot more of that in the world.
Well, the funny thing is, the Cybertruck has actually grown on me.
It'll grow on me when that bullet actually bounces off.
Well, this is true. I'm a big fan of him just because I've always wanted to live inside the movie Moonraker, and he's the closest we're ever going to get to Hugo Drax. I can totally imagine him putting like a high-power laser on the moon and holding the world hostage someday.
Yeah, well, he isn't afraid to dream big and do big, so I wouldn't bet against you there. But no, for me, it's obviously about solving problems, and you can't get there from here sometimes without making a big mess, and he's willing to make a big mess.
Right. But he's also willing to clean up messes, it looks like, because today was Battery Day, Tesla Battery Day. And there were a couple of very interesting announcements that came out of Tesla Battery Day. And just to kind of go over them here, first off, they've developed a new type of battery called a tabless battery, which supposedly will increase the range and power of their cars. They're saying makes the battery 6 times more powerful and increases the range by 16%, which is a pretty big deal for an electric vehicle, because one of the big limiting factors for adoption of electric cars is the range. You just can't get the range out of a battery that you can out of a gasoline engine.
Well, I am going to take a little bit of credit for this, because I'm going to say, I don't remember how long ago, maybe 3 months ago, had a long conversation in which I mentioned Mr. Musk, suggesting that I was really enthusiastic about the idea of using an electric vehicle, but that my retirement plans involved hauling a travel trailer. And even with the Cybertruck with a dual battery, unless I want to stick close to the cities, I just can't do that kind of thing. So, I need a little more torque in the truck. We had talked about, how do I get enough solar panels to charge my battery while I'm going? So, I'm going to take a little credit for inspiring this increased battery capacity.
Right. And one of the things they also announced in tandem with this is that Tesla is going to start building their batteries in-house. Up until now, they've been sourcing the batteries from Panasonic, and it's probably going to continue doing so for a little bit longer, but they are going to be vertically integrating their battery production, and they are working on creating a much more robust battery, as we mentioned. So that's exciting times, because one of the things they also want to do is build the same battery type into home batteries, which they are really pushing as a replacement for generators, especially in storm-prone areas. For homes that are doing solar, it's a great, capacitor for the solar energy to store the excess in sunny areas. So that is the next stage of their plan there. They also announced the new Model S, the Model S Plaid, which is unfortunately not actually plaid, because I would love to see a Tesla painted plaid.
Honestly, I would buy one.
But I guess that's the drivetrain, and I'm assuming that this is yet another Spaceballs reference.
Yeah, I think you could assume accurate. I think your assumption is accurate there.
Because they did put the ludicrous speed mode in the cars, and of course that's the line from Spaceballs. They've gone to plaid.
Right.
But this car, they took it out to the track, and I guess on the track they did the full lap in 1:30, which is a very competitive time. They think they can shave another 3 seconds off of that. But the range on that is 520 miles. It can go 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds, and has a top speed of 200 miles per hour.
Yeah, look, again, as I said earlier, that one of the reasons I am so such a fan is his willingness to go from nothing to really messy to messier to, oh my gosh, how are you going to clean this up, to an actual solution. As somebody who actually, I lived in a home that was largely powered by solar, one of the biggest frustrations, it was really exciting to tell people that my home electricity really didn't cost me anything, because we were selling back to the grid as fast as we were producing it. But the reality is, you aren't selling back to the grid, because none of that is being stored. And it would have been a greater investment for me as a homeowner in particular to know, as you mentioned, that I could have a battery with the capacity and the ability to serve up and store, if something were to happen, bad inclement weather, or especially when you live in a place where severe snowstorms can happen on occasion, or really bad, storms, and you can be without power for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I think all of this stuff is really, really interesting. I loved the Cybertruck presentation, as silly as it was. I really actually enjoy the references, particularly the Spaceball references. I kind of enjoy his Twitter feed. It's, fueled by great weed, I'm sure. What's really exciting for me is going from the initial wall battery that he announced years ago to something that people can actually afford and actually use.
Right.
So this to me is I'm glad you brought it up on the show. I hadn't had a chance to actually watch the presentation, just skimmed through a couple of articles. And to me, what this says is maybe one day I can actually drive a Cybertruck and pull a travel trailer that can fuel and power itself.
Right. Moving on to, they're going to be building another plant here in North America for their cathodes. They have a process that they're developing that should make their cathodes for their batteries 76% cheaper and produces zero wastewater, which is a big, big deal for resource management. That's been kind of the overall theme for today's presentation, was more environmentally friendly, more socially and economically responsible, and with the goal of making everything less expensive, more affordable, so that there can be more electric cars on the roads, lower emissions. And I think Elon actually made a statement today, which I was very, very impressed by, which was essentially that you don't have to sacrifice altruism for a profit motive. They can go hand in hand.
Well, this is a political conversation that actually doesn't bother me to have. The idea that people who are fans of the profit motive and understand that it's really what makes the civilized world go round also understand that you can't destroy and mismanage resources and keep that profit motive alive for long. You're right. Absolutely, they do go hand in hand. In fact, they must go hand in hand. You cannot maintain a long-term profit if you don't manage your resources to last long-term. And so, as a hippie conservationist myself, these kinds of things, hearing that they're going to use less resources, they're going to have to be replaced less frequency, they're going to produce less waste, is just one more reason for me to be a fan.
They also mentioned that they're going to stop using cobalt in the cathodes that they're producing. Cobalt, not only is it currently undergoing a shortage right now, but there are also a lot of concerns about the labor practices that are used to mine it. There are a lot of countries that actually use child labor to mine the cobalt, and so the company has sworn off all use of cobalt in the batteries that it makes. And the big announcement that I think really impressed everybody, that everybody's kind of wondering how the heck are they going to pull this off, they are setting the goal of building a $25,000 car.
I would be first in line for that.
Yeah. I mean, considering I drive a Chevy Spark, which I don't even have the electric model, I have just the regular 4-cylinder gas model, and it cost me $18,000. If I could get a Tesla for $7,000 more than that, I totally would have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I don't drive a Chevy Spark. I drive a car that cost me, $23,000, isn't a Tesla, that I still have to fill up with gas on the regular. I would have definitely been in if it's, for a $25,000 car.
All of this is going toward the goal of getting at least 1% of the cars in the world to be electric vehicles, all electric vehicles, which I think is a very noble goal. I have no problem with electric cars. I think... And we've said this before about Bitcoin, right? The big obstacle for Bitcoin to getting adoption is getting adoption.
Right.
You'll get more support for it if you get more people using it, but you have to get more people using it to get the support for it.
And in this case, the barriers to entry for Tesla are, one, the price, and two, the number of vehicles they are producing. And I think I did read also in one of the articles I skimmed is that they have a lofty production goal, something around putting out 20 million vehicles, which is a huge increase over what they have failed to deliver target-wise in the past.
Right, and a big part of that is increasing the efficiency on the batteries, being able to turn out more batteries with the same amount of space in the production line that they have. So that's a lofty goal, but I hope they succeed. And as crazy as Elon Musk is, it's, I think, the beneficial kind of crazy. And we've said it before, there's crazy and then there's eccentric. And Elon is definitely in that eccentric category. We need people who are rich and crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can hate all kinds of things about Elon, but he's not blowing his money on blow. And at least not all of it. And what he has done, what he has helped to create, isn't just leaps in scientific advances, but they are quality of life advances. And I think that's huge. I mean, you talk about people who make a dramatic impact on the world, and he's definitely way up there.
Thanks for listening to GulchCast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with all your friends and follow us online. Check out our website at GulchCast.com, where you'll find the latest top stories in science, technology, economics, and more. You can subscribe to our show through Apple or Google Podcasts, on Spotify, or with your favorite app using the RSS feed on our site. Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Minds, and Float at username GulchCast. And please join us on our subreddit at r/GulchCast. This program is a production of 1ACast Media. The opinions and statements expressed on this show should not be construed as legal or financial advice and represent only the opinions of the hosts and guests. They do not necessarily reflect the views of our advertisers or broadcasting partners.